We're at our fifth Empowered Seniors Speaker Series. It's nice to see a full house. Who here is here for the first time today? Excellent, glad to have you. We hope to see you back again. The series is put together because there seems to be an awful lot of information available for seniors and for adults and for adult children. It can become overwhelming, confusing. You don't really know where to go to get to the bottom of things and to seek out reliable, consistent, timely information. So that's the purpose here, that we're all here to provide information that you can rely on. We have an exceptional group of educational partners that you can reference and resource. They're all here to help you make decisions help us all make decisions as we age. If you don't, I'm Marian Ford. I'm a real estate broker here in Burlington. My specialty is later life moves. I'm working with older adults, later life moves, downsizing, estate sales. Most transactions are very much different from a regular real estate transaction. I come to this with some additional education experience, networking, and again, networking with the great folks like the partners here, so who can all provide whatever services are needed along the way. I'm just going to speak to my notes because I have a short memory. Actually, before we start, we have a surprise today. Does anybody need a hearing assist device? Can you all hear clearly? Because we've had some issues in the last several months that maybe. Do you need some help? So the library, they've been here all along and we didn't know they were available to us. So it's just make use of it if you need. Out. We just wanted to also introduce you to our educational partners that we have here with us today. We'll start, you've got a list of them on the handouts, and so you've got their contact information and just information about what services they provide. But we'll start at the far end. We have Neela White, she's with Raymond James, financial advisor. Neela had a presentation in July. It was the silent worry. She talked about finances and some of the issues that we will all be facing, particularly with healthcare and planning for the future. So it was a great presentation. All the presentations that we've had in the past are on the website on Empowered Senior Speaker Series. You can access them, all the replays, they're all there. So if you haven't seen that, it's worth your time to watch. Beside Neela, we've got Sarah Summers. Sarah's with Smith's Funeral Home. Probably someone that no one really wants to talk to, but she's your best friend. You're going to hear every month it's the same message. Be prepared, have the conversations, don't leave things to chance. And so that's one of the things that Sarah can help you with. We'll introduce Jeanette in a little bit. Jeanette is our keynote speaker today. But next over here we've got Angela Kelly. Angela is with a new project. It's States of Niagara. So there's some new types of retirement living options being built in St. Catharines and Niagara Falls. And Angela is the COO, a nurse by background, but she's helping to get those projects off the ground. And if you're interested in any of that, you can speak with Angela or myself. We also have Denise LeBlanc, Arbor Memorial, Burlington Memorial Gardens, one of those same kind of people that you don't want to talk to, but you really should. In advance planning and making sure that all of your estate needs are taken care of. I'd also like to recognize a couple that aren't here. Jared Zia, he's with Qualicare, Burlington, a home care company. They've celebrated 22 years in business in Burlington, so they're obviously doing something right. And Paul Cutajar, who's also not able to be with us today, Senior Care Access. They provide kind of comprehensive services for seeking out housing options for seniors and also consultation services. And I read Yoga 360 downsizing. Also, when we're in business like this and we're all working with seniors, you can appreciate that often we face some crisis situations, which that's our whole purpose of being here today, is to avoid these crises. But it's inevitable that sometimes we face that. So Irene is dealing with the business and her business today. I also just want to acknowledge and give thanks to Lisa Bilodeau. She's sitting in the back. You saw her when we walked in. And Nina Guduza is right here. They are my right-hand women who jack of all trades, and without them we wouldn't be able to put this on for you today. And here I'm a jack of all trades here too. We have to do all these push buttons. So, before we start today, I just want to point out that you have some notepads on your tables. Please use those to take down some notes as we go. Reminders for yourself for when you get home. Some things that you want to be sure that you address with your family. We're going to do things a little differently today. In the presentation, we'll stop partway through to questions as opposed to just taking them one by one. So, excuse me again, just note them and we will be sure to get to them. I'm just going to ask that everybody turns their phones off, please, just so we can minimize any disruption, and I'm going to do the same. Everybody. Your phone? Yep, okay, everybody's good? So we can get started with today's session, and I would like to introduce you to Jeanette Bock. Jeanette I've known for several years now. She's also a jack of all trades. She's got a varied background, started in Shoppers Drug Mart, went to retirement home, did you tell them all? Okay, it's easier for me. So she's a professional consultant who's passionate about helping seniors and their families through challenging times after she experienced a crisis with her own father 10 years ago. It was life-changing and led her to change her career path to make a difference in the lives of seniors. Jeanette brings 30-plus years of customer service and problem-solving experience to her role. She worked in retirement living for a number of years and was offered a position with the geriatric care management company where she worked for 3 years helping seniors out of crisis situations, then decided to round out her experience by working in home care. So welcome, Jeanette.
Thank you so much. It was lovely. So yes, I'm not a social worker. I don't have any medical background. I pretty much operate on sheer passion. I think that's probably the most accurate. And I've been told I'm intuitive. So I think that's it, and I've always had goals before that I was problem solving. So I've kind of brought all of that to my world of helping seniors, and because I love it, it doesn't feel like a job. It really just feels very natural. So that's for me. So of course, you start your business, you've got to come up with a mission statement, you've got to have a direction of what you want to do, and so really for me, it's to assist the seniors to live their best lives by providing advocacy, resources, navigation, choices, and support while planning the transition to their next chapter, whatever that is. Because we all go through phases in life, and each phase brings a change. And so our aging journey is very similar to that. So we have to pay attention and keep adapting to the changes that we need to make. So, in that, I found this great quote, and I really liked it because it really talks about the planning process. So planning is bringing the future into the present so that you can do something about it now. But really what it tells me is that when you're planning, you're staying in control. Even at a later time in life when you may not have control because of various things that can occur. So the planning stage is really your opportunity to tell your loved ones, everybody around you, what you want. And if you do that well, then they're only taking your direction when it comes to decisions. They're actually using the information you've provided them to inform the decisions they may need to have to make for you or on your behalf. So the better planning that you do, and the more planning that you do, the more you're going to get things the way you like it, and you'll stay in control, all right? So I'm big about that, because I get involved in situations, or get called into situations that are total chaos, and nobody knows anything about anything. And that's really what I'm trying to help everybody avoid. So when you know, you do better. And that's why we're here today. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, probably, this is what people think is their estate plan. Okay? Everybody knows that you do a will. So I'm going to ask, how many people here have done their will? Okay, so the majority of people. This is good. Excellent. Because does anyone know what happens when you don't do a will? So you become a ward of the Ontario Public Guardian and Trustee. So the government is essentially safeguarding your assets and will help you, or help to direct your assets if you need care and that sort of thing. But I don't think any one of us wants the government to be in control of not only our money, but where we live and other things. So, and I recently had a client that did not do a will of power of attorney, and he has some mental health issues. And so he has become now a ward of the Ontario Public Guardian and Trustee, which was very devastating to his kids, because the house gets locked up. They can't go into the house. They can't take pictures out of the house. They can take little tchotchkes, but nothing of value. So, and then the assets get, there's a formula how your assets get distributed. So I say that because can you imagine the family that has to then hear that news, understand what that means, and they've really lost a lot of their mother's history as well, because she passed away, and those things that were coming from her are never going to make it now to the family, right? So please, please, please do your wills, and choose your executor and powers of attorney with some thought, all right? So your executor, some of the things, we automatically look at our family and we think, okay, yeah, that's the one I'm going to give the executor duties to. Well, is that the one that is the most detail-oriented? Is that the one that has the most time? Is that the one that has some experience or understands finances and other things? Are they a good communicator? There's a lot to consider, because that executor is under the gun to get that estate through probate, because the beneficiaries are sitting in the wings and making phone calls. What's it happening? When's it coming? So you got to think about that executor. And there's also a lot of personal liability that comes with being an executor. So the decisions that you make as an executor can have a big impact on you yourself personally, in the way if you make a mistake in the executor duties. So I very much think you should talk to your financial advisors, and there's also people that actually do that. They're certified executors, advisor, that's what they're called, Neil? Yes. And so get some good information from them, especially if you think your estate might have some complexities, or the people that you have to choose from that are close to you in your family. Maybe you don't have anybody that fits the bill of what you think they should, what sort of experience they should have. There are opportunities for you to pay somebody a percentage to be an executor and to be a power of attorney for property, okay? So that's something you can talk to your financial advisor about, talk to your estate lawyer about. but it's just for information purposes, so you understand that that is a duty that can be taken on by a paid entity. What can't be taken on by a paid entity is your power of attorney for personal care. Does anyone understand what that attorney personal care decisions that they're making for you? They're almost like the hardest in my mind, because that power of attorney for personal care is going to have to decide for you, if you're not capable of communicating, where you're going to live, what you're going to wear, how you're going to get your care, and they need to know who you are. They need to know what your lifestyle is, what your belief system is, what your values are. Those are important things. So if you've never sat down with your family to tell them, you know what, if I can't talk for myself, I want to have my hair done twice a week. I want to make sure that I'm not sitting around in my pajamas all day. Please make sure they dress me every day. And I don't want to be wearing those like black stretched pants. I want to look good. I don't know, but it's up to you. And those are the things that you need to communicate with your family. And it seems almost overwhelming, but it's really important, because if you should, have some cognitive decline and you can't make decisions for yourself, what you've told your family and the information that you've told them will help guide their decisions when they need to make them regarding, where you're going to live if you can no longer live at home. So if you have some really strong beliefs, like, I'm not going into long-term care, I don't care. Okay, so then you have to think, all right, if I'm ill and I don't have family around and I can't afford a private solution, that may be your only option. So you kind of have to put some caveats around that, okay? I had a client once who he was the nephew, his aunt was his charge, and she had quite a bit of money, was living in a rural property, and she ended up needing 24-hour care. So this nephew had to make some tough choices because the money was starting to run out. 24-hour care, 7 days a week, is about $25,000 a month. Do the math. Don't do the math. It's frightening. And he, as a power of attorney for property, he has the responsibility to ensure that the funds last. So he can't be paying out $25,000 a month indefinitely. He needs to come up with a plan. She had said, I will not go to a nursing home. And so we called in lawyers to give us an opinion on that. And the lawyers said, well, that's okay. She's not talking or referring to private retirement living. So we made the move from her home into private retirement living. We went from paying $25,000 a month to $8,000 a month. Yeah. So I got a little off there, but I think it's important for you to understand that the communications that you have with your powers of attorney are really, really important. Powers of attorney are here to help you make decisions when you're alive. The executor is after you've passed. Okay? The executor's job is just to make sure that your estate, your will, your wishes and your will are seen to. Okay? But the power of attorney is when you're living and you're here, but you're not able to make a decision, or you've lost capacity, that sort of thing. Or you could be in a coma, or you've had a stroke, who knows? But that's why it's so important. And nobody talks about this, and I talk about it a lot, because I see people after in those situations. So of course, finances and insurance. I'll just quickly go through that. So providing a financial overview, you need to understand how much money that you have, because there are going to come to situations where you'll have to pay for care and business, but more importantly, you need to talk to your family. So imagine, you've had a stroke. Your kids are coming in from out of town. They land on the ground. They don't know what the situation is. You may not have had a conversation with them about your money and what money you have or what insurance that you may have for any particular situation. And they're frantic because something's happened, and now they're trying to figure it out in an emotional state. Hopefully you've had the conversation, you've said, don't worry, I have some insurance that will pay for PSWs and things like that. Great. That's good information to know. Also, finances. Yeah, we have enough money, we can afford home care for a period of time for this. Okay, so now you've had that kind of, have given him some understanding, or her some understanding of what your financial situation is. If you don't have those conversations, they might not know, and in some cases, your spouse has been deceased and there's nobody else to ask. So it's also a good idea when you start to work with a financial advisor to introduce them to your kids. So who's your power of attorney for property? Take them with you to see your advisor. So at least there's a little bit of a continuity, and they know who he is, so they're not thinking, okay, this guy's calling me, I've never met him before, is he really, the power of attorney for, what's your name? Anne. So it's a good idea to have these conversations. I hear people say, well, it's none of their business. Well, guess what? The ties change, and it becomes their business because they're the ones now that are trying to help you get what you want. Okay? So, yeah, this is another one. Assets in another country. So I know a lot of Greek people, and they all seem to have property in Greece. I don't know how, or why, but it's property that's getting passed down from generation to generation. Same thing in Italy, I think. People have had a place in a little village where their great-grandmother lived, and now they've passed it down. So you have to be aware and talk about what your plans are. Oh, we're keeping it in the family. Tell them. Communicate with them. And then, where are all of these documents kept? If they have to go on a treasure hunt, that's not going to be much fun for them at that time. So try and pull all your personal important documents together. So you have your insurance certificates, you have your latest printout of your finances with your financial advisor's name and phone number, address, so they can easily find it. You have this information about property in another country. Many people own property in Florida, that sort of thing. So put as much of the important documents all in this one place so they're not tearing the house apart to find these documents. Okay, now we're going to get into this. Your funeral arrangements. How many people here have pre-planned and prepaid their funeral? Okay, the rest of you have some work to do. All right, and we have 2 people here. You have no excuse. So here's the one, and it's kind of fun. But what are your plans? Do you have an idea that absolutely I'm cremated, I'm not rotting in the ground? What are your thoughts, right? Because that's where it starts. You need to talk to your kids and let them know, hey, and don't just tell one, tell all of them. Ideally at the same time would be great. But I have been in rooms with people where they say, oh golly, I don't know, I think she said she wanted to be cremated. Oh no, she wants to be buried. Well, you can't come back from cremation, so you need to make sure that they understand what your options or what your choices are. And does anybody know about aquamation? If you don't, you can talk to Sarah over there. She'll tell you all about it. And there's also things like natural burial. So unless you actually go and speak with a funeral director, you don't really understand what all your options are. So I put it on you, because mostly, I would say that mostly you're the parents of the adult children. I put it on you to decide what you want for your funeral. Because when my father passed away, my mom had done the planning, but I didn't know that we had to go to the funeral home the next day and identify the body. And I have to tell you, that was brutal. No other way to say it. For me, it was really hard. And I did the walk to the casket with my mom and everything, and that was great. And then we still, even though she had done some pre-planning, we had to go back and answer questions. And the emotional state that you're in when your loved one has just passed is almost like that fight or flight. It's hard to make decisions. And then if you have a sibling, then you're trying to, make the decisions. In actual fact, it's the executor that is responsible for making your funeral arrangements. So, it's incumbent on everybody here to inform your executor of what you would like. If you don't pre-plan, give them the basics, cremation or burial. I mean, people don't really understand, I think, as well, is that let's say you decide you want to be buried, all right, so then you need a plot. Okay. And that needs to be paid for. So sometimes people they'll do an insurance trust to pay out upon immediate death so that there's money there to plan and pay for the funeral. But if that's not the case, it's up to the executor to pay, right? So pre-planning, there's all kinds of benefits, not just the ones where your kids are like, oh, really, oh, thank goodness. I don't have to think about it. It's already done. It's already paid for. And now we're just walking in and just confirming the details of what was planned. That's far easier than walking in and have to sit down and answer. How many questions, Sarah, would there be? 87 questions.
Wow.
Potential. Yes, I have that one. So there's a lot. So the very first thing is make an appointment with Sarah to go over and understand what is involved and understand what are those 87 questions. And even if, like, my father just wanted to be cremated, he didn't care about anything. And so, yes, he was cremated, yes, it was a pine box, I think, and whatever, but he didn't want anything. And it was us, the kids, that said, that doesn't sit right with us. And so we did a really lovely family meal and gathering, and we all talked or told a story about that. But everybody is different. And that's why if you want to get what you want, you're the best person to plan for your funeral. And by pre-planning it, it also takes the burden off the family to figure out where the fund's coming from. So pre-planning, pre-paying. Go ahead.
I was going to mention with regards to funerals, so many of us maybe have a church that we attend and our families no longer do. And that's important. If you still want it to be a church funeral, and they are not, it's important to impart that to them, that you would like that.
Yeah, so did everybody hear what she said? Oh, she was talking about a church funeral is also, another, is an option, and people should consider that. There's actually also something called a death doula, that if you have different cultural beliefs, if you have a different way of wanting to celebrate life, the death doulas can organize all of that. And they work through, funeral directors as well. So it's just understanding and knowing what your options are so you can make the best choices. That's what I'm all about. If you don't know your options, how can you know if you make the best choice? All right, I won't say another thing. Special requests are a big one. All right, this one always here have talked to their spouse about the plans later on in life and what the plan is? Okay, I like it. Good deal. All right, not enough for you talking. When I get hired and I come onto the scene, it's something that we talk about. And I'm often surprised when the husband and wife, mostly husband, says, I'm not moving to retirement living. I'm staying in the home. I'm dying with my boots on and I'm committed. Okay, great. Where do we go from there? So my thing is, that's great, and more people want to age in place and remain in their home, and I'm all for that. However, it doesn't just happen. You have to plan. You have to, if it's the family home that you want to stay in, then you kind of have to take a good look around and think about, when my mobility starts to decline, am I going to be able to get up these stairs if I have a walker inside my house? Are the door jambs wide enough that I can easily maneuver? Is my master bedroom on the top floor and the only bathtub or shower is on the top floor? That's going to be a problem. So you want to think about, if you're going to live, if you want to stay in your home as long as possible, think about downsizing to something smaller if you're still in a 4-bedroom, 2-story home. And do it, you gotta think about this, and this is what catches people, because time goes by quickly. And then all of a sudden, here we are at 85, and what the heck? What happened? We meant to make that move, but we didn't. So we're still here. So that's when I find it harder, even with the services that I can arrange for you and bring in, it is a little bit more challenging. Because if you're having to get to the top floor and maybe you put in a stair lift, or maybe you've been lucky enough and you've had all your linen closets lined up and you were able to get an elevator in there. Right? But you have to think about the logistics of being cared for in your home when it's not conducive to your physical being anymore. Those things present those challenges, so you could run into a harder time with that plan to stay in the home. So always have a plan A, then have a plan B and a plan C. And the other part of that is, if you stay in your family home, does that mean your kids are nearby? Or did your kids move an hour or more away? Because that has an impact, because I meet many people who are staying in their home. Oh, we're independent, we're living at home. Hey, how are you getting your groceries? Oh, my daughter drops them off once a week. Great. Who does the eavesdrop? Oh, my son comes by and does that. He mows the lawn and he shovels the grass or shovels the snow. And then I say, okay, great. And what about who's caring for you? Who's doing your banking for you? Oh, my son or my daughter. Well, the news flash is that you're not really living independently. If they're all these people are doing all of this stuff for you, if they were all to go, you're not really independent anymore, because that would be a challenge. So that's what I need you to think about. And again, I've met people that are committed, they're going to age in place in their home. So when they first retire, so I would say you've got a window of maybe 10 years, you could do a major renovation in the home, but it's actually better to do it before you retire. Neil will tell you that. Right? So you have to think about it. Like, you got to be committed at 65. We're going to make a master with an ensuite on the main floor. We're going to widen our door frames, and we're going to make our kitchen a lot more open, and maybe some different height countertops if you end up in a wheelchair, that sort of thing. So things to think about. So if you're going to stay, if you're not going to stay, if you realize your family lives far away, and you think, I think we should move closer to the kids, wherever that is, have a conversation with them. mention, hey, by the way, we're thinking that we're gonna move closer to you. She's laughing, I can see that. But it's because that will, if you wanna stay in your home, moving closer to family will make it a little bit easier, for sure. My mom lives, well, my mom and dad lived in Grimsby. I'm in Oakville. And Dad ended up in long-term care in Beamsville. And then, so that was very challenging. It was a good hour and 15 minutes. You know what that's like out QEW, out that way. So it was hard. Work all day, hop in the car, get out there. And usually I'd get out to long-term care about 6 o'clock at night. And I would really only have an hour with him before he was falling asleep, and that was it. And then hop back in the car and go out. So again, I'm in the car for 3.5 hours, and I've seen my dad for an hour. So it gets easier if you're closer. So think about that. Don't ever think that you want to be any more than half an hour away from where your kids are, whether you move into retirement living or whether you go to long-term care. And I would argue you should be even closer when you're in long-term care to your kids. So think about that. It'll make it easier for them, and you'll see them more, because that is the trade-off. So, but there is good reasons to stay in your village, because that's where your doctors are, that's where your dentists are, that's where your friends are. So it's not an easy decision, and I don't imagine that it would be for anybody, but it's something that you just have to think about. And then we get to retirement living. So in retirement living, you've probably seen between Oakville and Burlington, there's probably over 30, probably close to 34 retirement living communities, at least. And they're all really different. There are some which they're called independent or independent supportive living. So what those mean is that they offer some level of care. And it's tough and it's tricky because you don't really know how high or how good their care will be unless you kind of really know the staff and you have a good understanding of their care, what experience the director of care's had, that sort of, and what the company that owns that retirement living community, what their vision is for it. And I'll explain. So you'll see Chartwells. Right, we've got a number of them in Burlington, so there's Martha's Landing, there's Christopher Terrace, and there's Lakeshore. Chartwell Lakeshore has memory living and it has assisted living. So that's pretty high care on both sides of things, both your cognitive and your physical. They're basically telling you we can take care of you at a higher level for both cognitive decline and physical ailments. Christopher Terrace and Martha's Landing, they offer independent supportive care. So that means there's a nursing station, not necessarily on your floor. They have a PSW and a nurse on duty, but they may not have more than that to manage the people that are in the community. And so, yes, they can do what I call AM and PM care, and they can do other things. But they'll draw the line that there's no Hoyer lift, and if you're bedridden, they wouldn't accept you. In some cases, if you're incontinent of bowel, no, they wouldn't accept you. And if those types of things happened from living and aging in their community, you may be asked to a higher level of care, or a lot of people don't realize this, they ask you to bring in one-to-one private care because they can no longer manage that level of care with their staffing model in their community. And that's what people need to understand. Be asking about the terms and understanding the terms, okay? So they have, again, independent supportive living. So if you're fine, if you're 89 and you're like partying enough, you've got no physical ailments or anything, you're probably fine there. You're probably absolutely fine in an independent supportive living environment. But if you have Parkinson's, if you had cardiovascular type of challenges, if you had any type of mobility challenges, then I would consider moving into a building that offered a higher level of care. Because then you won't have to move necessarily, and hopefully you'll also not be asked to put in one-to-one personal care. Not that there's anything wrong with that, it's just a surprise when you get the bill for that, and you think you're gonna move into a retirement living and it's gonna cost you $7,000 a month, and then you have to get one-to-one private care in, and then all of a sudden it's an additional, how many dollars? A lot, can be. And so that's why I talk about it. I want people to be aware of the terminology and understand what it's talking about. From somebody like me, I don't have any skin in the game. I don't take referral fees from any retirement living. I don't take them from anybody. So I'm there to guide you in your unique situation. Okay. So here we get to the physical and mental health. But these are the things that you have to talk to your kids about. And I'm not telling, oh, I went to the dermatologist the other day, or I went to, what I'm talking about, if you have been diagnosed with an ailment that is going to have impact on you on a day-to-day basis, you need to talk to your kids about it. If you are noticing some cognitive decline, things are a little off. No, we all do things that are a little off. And we all have times when we have short-term memory loss. But I'm talking about the things like putting car keys in the fridge. I'm talking about putting things, it happens. I'm talking about somehow you're not processing information as well. Your behavior seems to have changed, or you're becoming isolated because you're not confident in your ability anymore. You need to talk to your kids and give them the heads up about these types of things. You're not doing them a favor. I hear parents say, I don't want to worry them. I don't want them to worry. Well, guess what? My mom didn't want to worry us, and me specifically, I'm closest. But my dad had been doing a lot of strange stuff for about 6 to 8 weeks before he was hospitalized and before we were given the diagnosis that he had Parkinson's and Lewy body dementia. So you bet there's a lot of crazy stuff going in that house that I never knew about until my father ended up in the hospital. And that's when the whole realization, like, how long has this been going on for, Mom? Oh, a little while. We didn't want to worry you. Thanks. I'm in it now. So talk to your family about those things. And also talk to them and tell them, like, what medications you're taking. Where are you getting your medications from? The same pharmacy? Are you getting it in a blister pack? Are you going to multiple pharmacies? Depends on where you are to get your prescriptions filled. Are you staying with one? Stay with one. It's so much easier. Then they have a historical list of all your pharmaceuticals, what you've taken in the past, what you're currently taking now. And a lot of times, they're more up to date than your physicians. So make your pharmacy your best friend, your pharmacist, your best friend, and have a list of all your medications in those important documents so that your families know what medications that you're on and they can provide that to the doctors if they're asked. Okay? Also, do you have a list of all the specialists that you see? Right? My mom has a rheumatologist, she has a cardiologist, she has a physiotherapist, so she's got a few. And I made her sit down and write them down for me, so I would know. In a pinch, if we're in the hospital and they're asking about her, oh yeah, at least I can tell her. Oh yeah, she saw her cardiologist a couple of weeks ago. I think everything is good. It's just to have an idea. But as parents, give your kids this information or put it somewhere. You don't have to burden them with sending them emails and say, oh yeah, this is my list of, just tell them, I have an accordion file, I'm putting everything in that accordion And that's where you should go if things go bad. I take a turn for the worse, or something happens, you'll know where to go. All right. What's that? Yeah, absolutely. Anyone have any questions? I love it. Okay, Lydia's back. Hang on.
Have you put together a list of all these things that you're saying, you know, like it could just be a multi-page
It's
form that says, have you got it? Yeah.
Yeah, I call it an important document list. You know, so yeah, I can give it to you. See me afterwards.
That'd be good.
Okay. Anyone else? I saw some questions. Acclimation. Sarah can explain it, but basically, you're put on a. You want to explain it, or do you want me to explain it?
So it's basically similar to fire cremation, except for they're using water with a solution. That's the great thing about it. There's only one place that's licensed in Ontario at the moment, which is in Newcastle, but other places are starting to get licensed to do it. So it's similar to cremation. They're using water with a solution, and there's no casket.
There you go. Everybody learned something new today. All right.
Usually for probate. And my second question is, why should you necessarily pay for your
Ah.
Can you
Okay,
can you
let's
repeat
do
the
it.
question?
Because you're making money. You're making money.
Can
You're
you
not just giving it to, it goes into a trust.
I know that.
can you repeat the questions?
Yes,
Please?
sorry. This lovely gentleman, Mike, was asking, he asked me two questions. First question was, how long does probate take and how much does it cost? Well, that's a loaded question. And then the third question was, why should I give my money and prepay my funeral?
We are pre-planned,
Oh, but not
but I'm not prepaid.
Okay. So he wanted to understand the benefits of prepaying. Like, why should I give my money to them when I can have it in my bank account making money? Right? Is that essentially the question? So, first thing, how long does it take to go through probate? It depends on how large the estate, what region that you're in, what sense.
Right now, the current timeline is about 2 years.
2 years.
They're facing a backlog as a result of COVID.
Yeah, so it depends on where you're located, because the courts are located in different areas, and some are busier than others, and some have more staffing issues than others. So I had heard that it was taking about 2 years for probate.
But your income tax has to be done within a year. And they're
Yes.
saying 2 years
Yes.
for probate.
So you do file, on death, you do file
I can't hear you.
on death, you do file an initial personal estate return. So that is filed, which is what the responsibility is. So when you die, immediately your assets are deemed disposed, and you file a personal tax return. Probate goes through, so let's say 2 years from now, stuff is still in an asset, there's a whole nother tax return that has to be filed based on the value increase or decrease from date of death.
And then the question about how much, it depends on how much your assets, how much assets you have, because it's nothing up to 5,000 and then 1.5%, correct?
Yeah, it's a grading.
Is that-
graded
yeah.
value.
Rated value, yeah, so,
Yeah, it's a fire.
yes, go ahead.
Can you avoid probate?
No. He said, he asked if you can avoid probate. Well, I would recommend that you don't get in trouble with CRA, but you do you. I mean, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't try and avoid it at all, because we'll deal with that one afterwards. We'll get down the weeds too far. Was there another question? Yes, go ahead.
I just regarding number 1 and wills and
Yep.
executors,
How
personal
was
care.
your journey?
Yes.
Yep.
If I become incapacitated either physically or mentally. And I would like that, the MAID program to be initiated. Should I have that in my will?
No, you think about your will, well, we're gonna talk about where you should put that, but your will is read when you've passed. So don't put any instructions in your will that have to do with you living,
Right.
right? So we'll talk about advanced healthcare planning, and that's where that MAID piece would go in. And I'll talk about that shortly. It's the next slide, I think. Okay. Oh, yes, go ahead.
I just referred to the gentleman's question about free pay,
Oh,
because I don't think you answered.
oh, sorry, I did. You're absolutely right, Mike. Good catch. So when you prepay, your money is invested. It goes into a trust, and it's invested. And so it is actually continuing to make money. And in some cases, Sarah has told me, I don't know what's going to happen in the next few years, but in some cases, your money is made so much that it more than half pays for your funeral costs. So that money would come back to the estate. Sarah?
It's not second to the base.
Most banks have I used to work for a bank, and we administered the funeral trusts. And so they have a product especially for the funeral trusts.
That's right.
And you can ask your bank.
So did you hear that? So most funeral homes have a plan or an investment product, strategy that they're investing their money in. So it's up to you. You can pre-plan or prepay or both. It's up to you. Yes, go ahead.
If you prepay, and you say you're given the interest on
Yes.
what you prepay,
Yes.
so if I'm understanding this right, what you're earning on the day you prepay is a profit.
Well, not necessarily. Go ahead, Sarah.
I just don't want any confusion.
Yeah.
So,
Repeat the question.
Sure. So what's the benefit of prepaying a funeral and not keeping it in your investment, is what I'm understanding. So there's a few benefits. One is you go into a contract with the funeral home, and whatever your wishes are, we put in a contract for that day's cost. So it's as if you're paying for your funeral that day, okay? So the casket, that day's cost. The benefit is if you live 10 years, okay? So if you live 10 years, the inflation on that casket has gone up, correct? Just like everything else in the world, gas prices, blah, blah, blah. The money is held outside of the funeral home, so it's not in my bank account. So if Smith's ever, God help us, it didn't, but if it ever went under, your money's safe, it's in your name. Or, more often, if you move, okay, to anywhere in Canada, your money can go with you. Okay, so it's a trust in that way. It is I like to use insurance products, but we also use trust. The money is yours until death. It does gain interest, but it's a low rate. It's a GIC, okay? So I don't want anyone confused. There's not going to be a big pile of money at the end. However, that interest is tax-free, okay? No T5s. It's probate protected. So it doesn't go through any taxation as long as it's used by the funeral home and the cemetery. If you cancel, you will get a T5, okay? So yes, it will gain interest. It covers inflation first. If there's anything extra after that, it goes back to your executor, or you can designate a beneficiary. Now, the only ones that get money back today because of inflation are ones that were done 20 years ago. Okay? Because they gain enough interest to cover over the inflation. And just like the gentleman said, there's not a lot in there these days. But I'm hopeful with the GIC rate going up and hopefully inflation going down, maybe in the next 15 years, there will be a little pot of money at the end. However, the benefit is you paid for your funeral 10 years ago costs. Does that make sense? The products you purchased and the gravesite you purchased was from 10 years ago. So I already have a grave. Because guess what? I want it to be at today's cost. I don't want my kids to pay 50 years down the road cost of that gravesite. Does that make sense? So yeah, the money's not going to be this big pot of money, but it is probate free and tax free. So there are a lot of benefits. However, if you have a really good stock and it's making crazy money and you'd rather that, guess what? It goes through probate. Right? So you got to kind of understand. But I am available, and there's lots of coffee at Smith's.
And that's why Sarah is one of my trusted advisors, because she knows her stuff inside and backwards forwards. Okay, does anybody have any other questions about the first portion of the presentation? Because we're going to move on.
Actually, I have a comment. Couple comments. So I'm going to speak on behalf of all the children in the world. Because I benefited from conversations that I had with my parents. But it's important to stress that they can't be superficial conversations. So my mom said she wanted to die at home. It's like, okay, so I'll honor, and I was the estate trust, so the power of attorney for her personal care. And so I would honor her wishes. But her health failed, and it became increasingly difficult to keep her at home, I would say, okay, we need to revisit this again. Is this still what you want? Yes, that's what I want. And I would say, for how long? Well, as long as I can. Well, what does as long as you can mean? And then I'd say, well, if it means you want to die here, then at some point we may need to bring in a hospital bed. She said, well, I don't need a hospital bed. It's like, well, no, you don't need a hospital bed today, but you may need a hospital bed at some point. So it's really not just stopping at that first answer. Continue down. Continue down.
And we're going to get there, because we're going to talk about advanced healthcare directives.
And when my mom got closer to dying, and she was in her bed, and my dad was in the bed beside her, and no one was sleeping, and my dad's a mess, my mom's a mess, I'm coming and going like crazy, and we say, okay, maybe we need the hospital bed. And my mother said, no, I want to die in my own bed. And with my dad would say, and if I sleep in the other room, I'll be worried anyway. So leave us alone, basically, leave us alone. And say, okay, but it was their answer. It was their direction to me that I said, okay, like, I have nothing to do with this. I've got direction, they were sound on and knew what they were doing. So, but it was really, the lesson to me was, don't just leave it at the surface, really dig
Totally, absolutely. Thank you, and I appreciate that. Because it is our own experiences that teach us the best. And that's when I feel like I got a good education hard when my father was sick. So again, transportation. So losing your license is a big deal. It can really change things. It can really change things, and it can actually be the reason that you need to make the move. So it's a conversation with your kids. What are we going to do when mom and dad can no longer drive? What's the strategy? What is the strategy? Are you going to move closer to things where you can walk? Maybe you don't have mobility, and that loss of a license is going to be quite devastating. And maybe it's that makes you decide to move to a retirement living or go to an apartment that's closer to everything. Maybe it's that, but think about what happens, because that is likely going to be, Sonny, can you come and drive me to the doctor's? I got to get this appointment, that appointment. And that's great if they're living close by. That's great if they're retired. That's great if they have some flexibility in their schedule to be able to do that. I know a lot of sons and daughters would love to be able to be there to take their parents where they need to go, but a lot of others are still working and still have young kids, and so it really deserves a conversation so you can explain your expectations of the kids, and they can then have a conversation to say, well, okay, well, I can do this, and maybe John can do this, and maybe, Lillian can drive you to the doctor and be with the doctor with you. But it's a conversation, and I tell people this because I've seen often, and daughter's a nurse, she's gonna be the one looking after me. Oh, so she's not working? No, oh no, she's working, but when I need her, she's gonna leave her job. Really? And how will that work exactly? Are you gonna pay her now? So, it's a conversation. It shouldn't be an expectation. You have to have the conversation about that. And again, thinking about am I comfortable with public transport or public transit if I can no longer drive? Is there a public transit stop near me? Do I know the schedules? Do I know where I need to go? And is there a route that will take me there? And then friends, families, and neighbors. They're great, but you gotta look at them as if they're volunteers. They may be able to take you one time, but maybe they can't take you the next time. So you kind of have to devise a strategy. And that's what I'm talking about, because that will push people to make a change in their living accommodations. All right, here's the big one. Advanced healthcare planning. Has anyone heard this term before? Good. So you can think of this as a living will. And people used to talk about these living wills all the time. They're not legal documents. And neither is an advanced healthcare plan. What it is, and I've done it, and I'll tell you why I did it. So I'm in a second marriage. I have 2 children of my own. My husband has 2 children of his own. And my husband, my second husband, and my kids enjoy a wonderful relationship. And unfortunately, because of the work that I do, I have seen things not go well in second marriages. Because adult children sometimes don't accept the second husband, don't want them, don't think they need them, that sort of thing. And always think they know their parent better than the spouse, that new spouse. Well, I have to tell you, not in my case. So I wanted to make sure and preserve the relationship that my husband has currently with my kids, which is an awesome relationship. I wanted them all to be on the same page. So I sought out somebody to do my advanced healthcare directives. And basically we started by talking about how I defined quality of life. Because every single person in this room will look at quality of life differently. Because we're all unique individuals. And we all have had experiences in the past, and we've seen things, so that will kind of guide our quality of life. So for me, my quality of life, I want to live. I don't want to, and I use this term, linger. So lingering for me is when somebody is bedridden and they really are not being able to live the life in the way that they envisioned. And at that stage, you have to have some idea. You have to think about this yourself first. If I get to a stage where I've had a stroke and I've lost all functionality in my right side, what do I want? What do I want? That's a hard thing you have to ask yourself. You gotta ask yourself what you could live with before you can talk to your spouse about it, before you can talk to your kids about it. You have to be clear. And so, I'm very open. I give myself as an example because why not? So for me, I'm pretty active. I want to be communicating. I want to be socializing with people. That's where I get my energy. I get my energy from socializing and from having people in conversations and that sort of thing. It would be really hard for me if I lost my ability, my mobility. It would be hard for me if I lost my voice and I couldn't communicate. And I have actually referred to a frailty chart within my own advanced healthcare planning and said and directed my kids, my husband, everybody, that when I get to a point where I'm what's considered a frailty level 7, and a frailty level 7 means that everybody is having to do everything for me, or people are having to do everything for me. I don't want to be here. So I have said, do nothing. do absolutely nothing if I stop drinking water. That's my natural way of passing. So those are the types of instructions and the thought that you have to think about. But it's difficult if you're just trying to just do it by yourself because you have no concept of what are the questions that will be asked of your children when you're in an ICU or in an emergency situation, that sort of thing. So I work with two great ladies that do advanced healthcare planning, and these are the things that they talk about with you to just sort of get you thinking about what do you consider your quality of life, okay? There's a lot to go over, and I'm looking at the time right now. So, but basically, thinking about as you age and at what stage is it for you that enough is enough? And then if you are considering or would consider medical assistance in dying, you need to have that conversation with your kids and don't spring it on them, out of the blue when there is a situation. Have a conversation and let them know. And that is a very personal decision. And it's one that I say should be made by the person. Nobody wants to say bye early, let's just say. So it has to be a person's choice. And once you're comfortable with that choice, talk to your family about that if that's what you want. I'm just going to take a question.
Yes, the medical assistant, is there a special document you need? Do you have to go have it ahead of time? Well, yes. But how long before, like, say, okay, I'm gonna be around for another 10 years. Should I go and get it now, so it's there?
No.
Or do I just take
you
a
can't.
pill and a bottle of whiskey and sit down? I mean, everything is so.
She's asking how far in advance. Like, she wants medical assisted dying, should she be running out now to get a form and letting people know? No, actually, you really don't do that until you're at that stage. And at that stage, you can call for a counselor, there's a line, there's a phone number to call. You talk to a counselor as the beginning stages, and there's an assessment program. It's over, I think there's 3 different separate assessors that will have the conversations with you, making sure that they believe you're making the choice for the right decision. Go ahead, Neela.
I was just gonna say, right now, the current rule, that might be subject to change in April of 2024, is you actually have to have a terminal diagnosis.
Yeah, well, you see, I don't wanna go into a nursing home. So then I take the bottle of whiskey and the sleeping pill.
Petition made.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Totally understand. I'm not going to comment on that. But yeah, so if you decide that medical assistance in dying is what you would consider, it's really just about letting your family know that yeah, if this happened to me, then I would consider medical assistance in dying. Leave it at that. When you get to a stage where you have a terminal illness, you can actually, if you have Parkinson's, ALS, that sort of thing also, you don't have to have an immediate, you don't have to be immediately in the, what they say, foreseeable future. But if you have a diagnosis of a Parkinson's or an ALS, that might not put you in a situation right now where you're experiencing a lot of the symptoms and ailments that those diseases come with. But you know what the trajectory might be. If you have ALS, we've all heard of ALS, I'm sure, and the havoc that it wreaks on your entire muscular system, and basically you're dying a slow death. Things are gradually shutting down. Not a nice way to go. So they offer up medical assistance in dying. But like to Neela's point, she's talking about the mental health side of it. So somebody that gets diagnosed with a dementia, Alzheimer's, that's not an option for them at this point. But it is something that they're discussing, and they may make changes in the future. So when I wrote my advanced healthcare planning, it was saying if I am diagnosed diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia and the laws have changed, I would like to be considered for medical assistance in that. That was it. But there's a lot of information. I mean, there's a ton of information you can put on this, and I'm running out of time, so I'm going to move on really quickly, and we can ask these questions after. Great. So end of life, this is for the main consideration that's coming in. Yeah, and where would you like to spend your final days? So just saying that you can go to a hospice if, you know, your death is pretty foreseeable within sort of 6 to 8 weeks, I kind of say that, then you could be cared for in a hospice, which is an amazing offer. Like, it's a great, very tranquil, it's great for your family to come. There's staff that know how you're feeling and can really offer that comfort in those final days. But you can also pass away at home, and they will put in a palliative care team as well in your home. So you don't have to pass in the hospital. That's what you should know. And that's really what you need to know. And then what, if any, interventions you want. So, I tell you many stories about this, but just ask yourself the question. You know, my answer would be very different now compared to, you know, I'll be 59 next month. So in 30 years from now, I don't probably want you to do anything to intervene in my death. I want to go. Just let me go. I don't want chemotherapy. I don't want anything that's going to prolong my life. I've had a good life at 89. I'm out of here, you know? But everybody is different. So you need to ask or tell your kids, because otherwise, how will they know? And the guilt that they have on them for having to make some of these decisions with not knowing your wishes, I can tell you it's hard. It's really hard. And then, did you sign a DNR? People say, oh, hell yeah, I have a DNR. Where is it? Do you have a signed document? DNR is a tricky little thing. Because you actually sign a document that says DNR. But if you've collapsed at home and your husband calls EMS, and the first thing they're doing, they're not asking, they're gonna revive you. That's what they're there for. Unless you have a signed document on your chest or the fridge. You're right, Angela. That is another place where the EMS will look. But they're not searching down your house. Look, where's that darn piece of paper? I can't do anything until I find it? No, you're not doing that. So you need to, I've seen it as well where people have basically, you see it on social media, DNR. I was reading something the other day, and in that article, there's a guy lying there with DNR. That's still not going to potentially do it because it's not signed up. So anyways, so just so you know that it's not guaranteed, those DNRs. And then expectations of family, we've sort of talked about that. Talk about what your need is. Ask the family if that is an option. If you are going to compensate, let them know. If they have to leave their job to provide care for you, you probably should compensate them. Again, that's a conversation. And this one, legacy and unfulfilled dreams. So if you still want to jump out of an airplane when you're 90, you should probably tell your kids if that's what you want to do. But one of the things that actually with my mom, she hadn't been to Egypt. And she says, I'm never going to get to Egypt now. Well, wait a minute. Through COVID, there was all these virtual tours of all kinds of places all over the world. Well, we can go to Egypt. Let's go to Egypt now. Where else would you like to go? So it's really trying to find, maybe you can fulfill their dream, or maybe you can kind of negotiate something similar, or something that will bring them joy. But it's also about, what's your legacy? What would you like your kids and your grandchildren and everybody to remember you by? Was there a special charity that particularly was, it touched your heart and that meant an awful lot to you? Then probably let your kids know, you know? The dreams things, but here's my big one. Any skeletons in the closet, don't wait for them to find out when really passed, because that's not something they'll likely recover from. So, gotta say it, can't have the conversation, write it out. Leave them a note and explain some of the things that maybe you failed. Put in the will, provide them an explanation, because once you're gone, they don't have that option anymore to ask you, why did you do that? Okay, I'm done. I did it, all right. Go ahead.
A few moments ago, you talked about a frailty chart.
Yes.
Do you have that, or is it your own personal thing?
No, it was given to me, by the nurse that did my advanced healthcare planning. She put that in because she told me that the medical community understands that frailty chart. So, and that was important to me because obviously, right now, I feel great. Yes, I want you to save my life, please and thank you. But later on, I may not. And there is a piece on my advanced healthcare planning where I have to look at it every 3 years and see if I am still in agreement, because I might change my mind. So if the onus is on you to change your mind, change the advanced healthcare plan.
The same thing is true of a will. You need to revisit that frequently.
Every 5 years. Or more. And depending on the event that might happen. For sure. Go ahead.
I looked up what we were talking, there is a Canadian frailty scoring.
There you go.
Sorry, could you repeat that? What
There
you
is a
said?
frailty scale on the Canadian frailty scale. Yeah, on the website. Which website?
So you can just type in Canadian frailty score, and this one has, there's some different ones. Some are UK, but this one's specific
Yeah, you
to
just Google.
Canadian frailty.
Yeah, but pay specific attention to the Canadian one, if you're gonna use it.
There's also a medical one that the physicians would do, that they would evaluate you based on.
Yes, yes.
So what's the difference between the advanced healthcare and POA?
Okay, well, you're gonna give your advanced healthcare plan, because you've done it, you've done the work, and you've given the instructions in that advanced healthcare. You're now gonna get into your power of attorney for personal care. Because that's the person that has to make all those decisions that you just kind of outlined and what your wishes are in that advanced healthcare planning document. That's the document you should then give to your power of attorney for personal care, because that power of attorney for personal care is responsible for making decisions for you that affect your day-to-day life.
I would have thought that all the things that were in the advanced care would already be in the power of attorney. No, then I misunderstood what the POA was for then.
No, the power of attorney is really, you're telling them on the power of attorney, you're telling them who you've appointed as your power of attorney, and you're telling them if they are jointly with somebody else, jointly and separately with a sister. It could be, your wife is your primary, and your daughter could be your secondary, and your son could be your third power of attorney. And then you've got power of attorney property and power of attorney personal care. And that personal care piece, I argue all the time that person needs to know you, needs to know your likes and dislikes. And if they don't, you better write it all out for them so they understand how you like your lifestyle. Because they're going to make those decisions based on that, what they know of your lifestyle and who you are. Okay? Okay, so that's why I say, at the beginning of this, I said that your estate plan, everybody only focuses on your wills and power of attorneys, their money. But I would argue that you need to focus a lot on how you want to live day to day. Because great, you have the money, but if you haven't told people your wishes and how you want to live, then you can have all the money in the world, but you're not going to be very happy because nobody's making the decisions for you that you outline. You understand? Does that make sense? Okay, yes.
I think it's important that you let your family know the contacts they have to, your contact with the thing for your insurance, if you have a private insurance, who they have, like I have 2 private insurance, my husband's and my own, who they have to contact, what the names of the companies are.
That's right, all of that
All of
information
that
in
information.
your, yeah, in your report document.
As well as with the document.
I think I'm getting the hook. Does anyone have any other questions for me? Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure. I hope you got something out of this.
Thanks very much, Jeanette. If you didn't hear, if you've been here for the several months that we've had, we've talked about wills and estates, we've talked about financial planning, we've talked about advanced care planning, we've talked about making modifications to your home. And we've talked about in every one of those that it's important to have conversations. So Jeanette's brought that full circle. She's brought it back and brought it to the front and center for us so that we have some better tools to narrow down what those conversations are and how to have them. And reiterating again the importance of having these conversations. So thank you very much. I'm sure you can all tell that Jeanette's very passionate about what she does. And time well spent with you. Before you head out, I'm just going to ask that you please do fill out the surveys. They're really incredibly important. If you've been here the last several months, we've been listening to what you're saying, and I'm happy to tell you that we've got a plan for 2024 based on your feedback. So these sessions will continue monthly, second Wednesday of every month. Ideally, they're going to be here, space permitting. So the feedback that you've given us has been very valuable, and I just appreciate that you continue to do that so that we can schedule the 2024 sessions accordingly. And thank you again to our educational partners. Again, you can see they bring a vast array of experiences and knowledge and expertise. And they are someone that, all of them are people that you can rely on should you need their services. None of us will find you. We're all here to provide whatever kind of help you need when the time arises. Our next session is Wednesday, November the 8th. It's actually Christine Brunsden is going to be presenting on the benefits you didn't know you had. So there's lots of tax incentives or tax programs and things that you may not be aware of, and then she will bring those to you just for your own information. And the benefits you didn't know you had. So they're not all necessarily related to disabilities, but there's lots of things that you can access that you may not be aware of. You plan to attend. You can, if you have registered, that's fine, we've got our registration list. If you haven't registered yet, we can just speak with Leah or Lisa and they can add your name to the list for next month. I will send out a video recording of this probably next week. As I said earlier today, that all those sessions are available on the empoweredseniors.ca website under past events. You can access all of those recordings. So thank you very much for coming. I hope to see you next time.